Before we start today's episode, a bit of housekeeping for all those listeners out there. Whichever your podcast listening platform of choice, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, reviews can make a huge impact. And not only do we value your feedback, which can help us create better content, it will also help others discover the podcast. So spread the love and leave a review if you've got a minute. And with that, on with today's show. I'm the Reverend Dr. Jenny McKay, veterinarian and minister in secular employment, environmentalist, activist, and self-confessed cat junkie. But believe it or not, I have never spent the day on a kayak with two lovable dogs. Someone who has is my guest, Jason Zackowski, science teacher, dog dad of Bunsen and Beaker, and host of the Brilliant Science podcast. So, hi, Jason.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we're very happy to have you. So please tell me about what looked like a magical day with Bunsen and Beaker out on the open water. And I must say, I was a huge fan of their life jackets.
Well, safety first, right?
Right.
Most dogs are pretty good swimmers. Like Beaker, our golden, is a little fish. And Bunsen is our Bernese Mountain Dog. He does not like to swim at all. He is not a good swimmer.
Oh.
So just in case, we have special life jackets for them. Yeah. And we live in Alberta, Canada, and we're not too far away from the Rocky Mountains. Like they're a very short drive. And the mountain lakes are absolutely breathtaking every time I go to kayak on or paddleboard. They're very cold. They're very cold, kind of like probably the Atlantic Ocean cold, or maybe colder.
Yeah.
But it is so fun to do something like that with your dogs, because when you walk your dogs, you get to experience nature, you get to see their expressions. And then when you're out on the water with them, it's kind of the same thing. Now, Bunsen's maybe not 100% a fan of being on the water, and that's why he goes in the kayak. So he takes up the front of the kayak and he can lay down. But he wants to come. He doesn't like to if he had a choice to be left behind on shore or come in the kayak, he'll come in he will jump in the kayak so he doesn't get left behind. But Beaker is a pirate. She is a little like yo-ho me hearties kind of little creature. So she stands up on the side of the kayak, she looks around. When she was young, she would just jump off the side of it to go on her own adventure, so we had to have a marine leash attached to her life jacket.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it's just, you kayak around, you look at the water, the wildlife, the mountains, the sky. That's that deep aquamarine green color from the rock.
Beautiful. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I could keep going and going, but I'll wrap it up. That's what it's like.
Oh, wonderful. So they both like the water in their own different ways, I guess, don't they?
Mm-hmm. Well, Beaker loves the water. Bunsen
likes to be
it, so he doesn't get left behind.
Goes with the flow.
Yeah.
So for those not yet initiated, can you tell us all about Bunsen, your handsome Bernese Mountain Dog, and his sister Beaker, who is the equally gorgeous Golden Labrador, and their adventures in science?
Yeah, so quite by accident, a picture of Bunsen went viral when he was 10 months. He's a big dog. Bernese Mountain Dogs are giant. And there's other dogs bigger, right? But he was big. He was like 90 some pounds when he was 10 months old. And I was working in my classroom because my day job is I'm a science teacher. And I was like, hey, I wonder, he's so big, he could probably wear my lab coat. And I'm 6'3", and I was like, it's going to be too big on him. And no, it fit him perfectly. And I snapped a picture of him wearing my lab coat with my big safety glasses, and it was a whole thing. And then quickly after that, I realized that if I tweeted from the perspective of a dog, we could teach science to everybody. So that's where our Twitter account took off, was Bunsen, the Bernese Mountain Dog, the dog who teaches you science. And he was always very calm and gentle about everything, and took his time to explain things, but there's always a doggy slant. Like, this is very cool science, but I like, it's very awesome. They're doing this stuff on Mars, but NASA, let us know when you find bacon on another planet, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that, yeah.
It makes it fun, doesn't it? And you reach out to probably a lot more people when you've got this animal aspect to it as well.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why science is, the most famous science communicators traditionally are kind of characters, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you think of Bill Nye, the science guy, he's a character, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. He's himself, but he played a character on the TV show. And then during COVID, we got Beaker, and she was this little chaotic, bitey golden retriever. And within a day, Bunsen just loved this little bundle of shark bite, and now they're best friends. And Beaker teaches science too, but she's very excitable. So she talks in all capitals and has a lot of energy. So that's Bunsen and Beaker.
Oh, they're absolutely wonderful. And I know you also have a podcast, social media accounts, a website, and a newsletter.
Yep.
But when did that idea of combining your love of animals and your passion for teaching science first come about?
Well, I'm a passionate science teacher, right? Like I love my job as being a science teacher. And I love animals, like especially dogs. I was that person at a party that didn't really like to talk to people, but if there was a dog, I would be that person hanging out with the dog the whole time. And as things happen, we got to a point in our life where we were financially stable to welcome a dog into our house because they're a big time commitment and they're expensive. And man, it was basically an accident of putting the two together. And I wish I thought of it sooner, but then we wouldn't have had Bunsen. It would have been a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite by accident. And I think everybody loves dogs so much that they're willing to suspend disbelief that a dog is teaching you science, right?
Yes.
Through text.
Yes, absolutely. I suppose it's a bit like the Reverend Vet. Some people don't listen to my reverendy stuff, but they like the fact there are some animals thrown in as well.
It's the hook.
It is. So, well, I wish you'd be my high school chemistry teacher because I can tell you're really, really passionate about it.
Love it.
Can you tell me a little bit about your career in science education? And importantly, did Bunsen and Beaker ever come to school with you?
Man, I forget how long I've been teaching. I'm currently the science department head of my school in Red Deer, Lindsay Thurber High School. It's a French immersion school. Okay. So there's an English side and a French side. I teach on the English side. I don't speak any French.
That was my next question.
My sons and my wife are fluent. So they went through French immersion. Okay. And yeah, so I teach interbaccalaureate chemistry and I teach that, but I also love teaching the kids who have maybe been discouraged by school. So they're not as academic and they have to take this class to graduate. It's called Science 20. And it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different types of science: chemistry, biology, physics, and geology. And I love teaching that class almost sometimes more because I think I can get those kids to love science. That, they've been discouraged. It's been hard. They've failed or they've struggled. But science is hard and parts of science are difficult, but science is amazing. Science should fill you with wonder every time you just do anything. Like literally today, NASA was talking about dark matter on Twitter, and I got to ask a scientist a question about dark matter and dark energy. And that stuff is wild. And that's just like a teeny part of science. Absolutely. And do Bunsen and Beaker come to school? Sort of. So most schools do have a policy that don't allow pets, especially fuzzy pets, because of allergies. That's the big thing, right? And then our school is quite international, so we have kids from all over the world, and some kids are from cultures where dogs are not seen as pets, and they are like absolutely terrified of Bunsen and Beaker. So they come in during special times and the kids, it has to be when I'm not teaching, right? So a kid shouldn't feel intimidated by an animal I've put into the classroom, so they don't come to school. So
Okay.
that's when they come. But the kids love, even the kids that are scared of dogs. Bunsen finds those kids and he works so hard to be their friend. It's like he can tell they don't like dogs, and he'll follow them around, and he'll sit and he'll look at them. He'll follow them around, and he just tries to kill them with kindness.
Oh, I'm sure he wins them over.
Most of the time, yeah. He's very big. He's very big. So if you don't like dogs and he's this giant bear thing that's like following you around and smiling at you, it might feel like he's trying to eat you.
Scary. And I guess your students are also probably fans of the science podcast.
Well, that's a tough one because they know about Bunsen and Beaker, right? And our social media accounts dwarf anything that they would have. And they are consumers of social media. But one of the things with teenagers you'll find when you work with them a lot is they don't care about what the teacher is doing. They care about what they're learning, right? And they care about if they are being cared for. But most importantly, they care about themselves. They're going to be way more concerned about what they're doing on social media than their teacher and his dogs. So maybe some listen to the science podcast.
Okay.
But I do use the guests and I kind of highlight them, and they enjoy that. They're like, oh, you got to talk to this person. And I'm like, yeah, here are 2 things that they talked about. So they get kind of excited about that. But will they spend an hour to listen to me talk on their podcast when they're forced to listen to me all day?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. They just need a little bit of a break, don't they, from their teachers? Yeah.
They come storming into my classroom because TikTok sometimes pushes our stuff to their feed, and they're like, "You're on my feed. Like, why is your video on TikTok?" And I'm like, we do okay at TikTok. Like, you're gonna see our stuff eventually.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway.
TikTok is so popular now, isn't it?
Yeah, with the kids and adults too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have really embraced this new media and technology as a means of teaching science. But what would you say is the biggest change you've noticed in the classroom since you first started teaching science?
I think it's the when to use technology and when not to use technology. So, cell phones, for example, right? So when I first started teaching, only the Richie Rich kids, like the kids who had parents with a little bit of money, they are the only ones that had cell phones, and cell phone signal wasn't great, and Wi-Fi didn't really exist, or I don't think Wi-Fi existed. So you really didn't use your phone for anything but like calling your mom or dad to pick you up after sports, or and because nobody else had a phone, you couldn't text anybody. It's not like you're probably not going to text many people. But now every kid has a cell phone. Every single kid has a cell phone. I'd say almost all kids. So is it a distraction? It absolutely can be. But the kids use their cell phones as a search engine, right? So if the kids use their cell phones, and it makes me a little frustrated, if we have Chromebooks to use for a thing, they'd rather use their cell phone instead of the Chromebook. Sadly, they're faster, and I understand that. Kids use their cell phones. They don't bring a textbook. Their textbook is on their cell phone. So there's all of these changes. And the big one is the AI stuff. Like, that is something that education is having a big reckoning with right now. And I opened my big mouth at a staff meeting. So now I'm the AI guy for our school. So teachers coming to talk to me about ChatGPT and AI, right? In science, it doesn't really affect the kid because it's not like they can use ChatGPT on a test. But for the social and English departments with essay writing, it's definitely is completely fundamentally changed what they can expect kids to do when and where. So those are just some changes. I could keep going, but it gets gets pretty into the weeds, and maybe not everybody's.
AI is a huge issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll just call out one of my podcasts with Tim Bull, who was an expert on AI and was talking about all the positives, I suppose, but with positives, you do get some negatives with this technology, as with everything.
Yeah.
So we've all experienced the COVID lockdown. We've come out of it now, but I think that the pandemic helped educators embrace technology and online learning practices. How did you get on with remote teaching personally?
Yeah, that was a very tough and emotional time. If you're a classroom teacher, the biggest thing that you love doing is like interacting with kids. And when they're online, that is very, very different. So I would have to say it was almost like teachers went through a grieving process, like the ones that were really connected to their kids, because we saw them in Canada for a month before they were shut down. So you were starting to build relationships with these kids, and then gone. They're done. So yeah, we had to teach online, and I was a little bit more tech savvy than many of my colleagues. So I was ready to go. I was like excited, because I love teaching. I was like a new challenge. I was like, let's go. We're going to do online shenanigans, and I'm going to shoot some videos. And like not all of my colleagues were at that. They were like very stressed out and didn't know how to do it. So did everybody embrace technology? I think some people did, and I think some people survived because it wasn't the way that they were used to teaching. One thing that it has definitely improved is many teachers now can post the notes, right? The things that they do if a kid misses a day.
Yes.
Because back when I first started teaching, a kid was sick and they come back, they're like, what did I miss? And I'm like, well, talk to your friends, right? Get their notes. So generally we try to throw that stuff online for the kids.
Yeah. So at least something positive has come out of it.
Yeah. And we all learned how to upload stuff to YouTube very quickly.
Yes. And lots of people, young and old, probably the older population, I think they felt a bit stressed out having to go on Zoom to maintain communication with the friends and family.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all dab hands at this now.
Yeah. Here's my impression of kids. This is my impression of like 90% of the kids on a Zoom call. Ready?
Okay.
No, this is audio. This is audio only, so you're going to have to explain what I just did.
So Jason has just turned off his camera, and indeed, that is right. Sometimes you feel as if you're just talking into a black hole, isn't it? And no doubt the kids are there, probably doing something in the background, checking their phones, tapping away at the keyboards. But that is a very funny experience. So there are some explanations I think I'd like you to give our listeners. Can you tell us what the following are? A danger noodle, a cobra chicken, and a chunky murder weasel, and which should we fear the most?
So there is a thing I do every Friday on Twitter called Text from Bunsen. It's hard to describe, but it's a text conversation that Bunsen has with people from the family. It is very popular, and we've written a book, and that we've just finished the second book. It's like a compilation of these jokes. So other people seem to resonate with it. And one of the things that I started and it caught fire was like, what would a dog, if it was to name an animal, like what would it name an animal that was like completely never saw before? And one of these I did not come up with myself. It's the Canada goose. The you've probably seen pictures of it. It's the biggest goose in the world. It's got like the black head and the white body. And they are, during nesting season, extremely territorial and vicious. So when they come back to Canada to get jiggy and have their babies, they are monsters. They're absolutely, they hiss. They will chase you off a street.
Mm-hmm.
So they, so cobra is the sound that they make like a snake, and chicken because they're a bird. So that's the
That's
cobra
good,
chicken.
isn't it? Yeah.
And their neck kind of like curls up like a
Yes.
cobra about to strike, and they'll bite you, they'll attack you. And then when they go to the States, they just, poop all over the place, and they're not as vicious. So some of the Americans are like, we don't have a problem with them except for the poop. What was the other one?
A danger
A
noodle.
danger noodle. So yes, our youngest son Adam, had a snake. It was a ball python,
Mm-hmm.
and named Ackless. And I was like, what would a dog? Because the dogs generally would not ever come across a big snake. So it was a noodle, and it was dangerous. So it became the danger
The
noodle.
danger noodle.
Yeah, Bunsen had many names for the snake: danger noodle, the nope rope, the spooky slinky. So I just came up with like, a bunch of names for tube, terrifying tube. Yeah.
And what was the other one? A chunky murder weasel.
So you're in the UK, right?
Yeah.
Right. So there are UK badgers, United Kingdom badgers,
Yeah.
right? And they are very different than the North American badger. The British badger looks friendly. It would invite you in for a cup of tea, right? A North American badger, it looks like it's on meth and it's going to eat your face.
Yeah.
So they are big, they are vicious, they keep to themselves. Like you have to go out of your way to mess with the badger. They'll chase bears, like they just don't care. They are, yeah. So a bunch moved into our property because we live on a farm. I think there was gophers there and moles they were eating. And we were going on a walk, and one popped out of its giant hole, because they make giant holes. I should have saw it, and it chased Bunsen and I away. And Bunsen was like, normally he's very brave, and he probably, if my wife was around, maybe he would have fought it or like tried to scare it back. But he's like, nope, we are running away from whatever this is.
Oof.
So,
and
they're kind of like they're kind of like bulbous, so chunky. Murder.
Okay, I wonder if they're bigger than the British badger.
Yeah, they're bigger. Yeah.
Bigger and nastier. I'll have to Google it.
Do a Google image. You'll be surprised how differently they look.
Well, I think of those three. I think, yeah, I'd be most frightened of that chunky murder weasel. But one of my favorite parts of your brilliant Twitter feed is the timeline cleanse. And you post these lovely pictures of Bunsen and Beaker, and then you get the followers to post their own animal pictures. Do you think social media could use a lot more feel-good posts like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, they have like a dark side, right? It doesn't take you too long. And if you're on TikTok, your algorithm will just be people fighting and being angry. It doesn't take too long on Twitter, and you will have your whole feed full of people having political fights. Instagram, same thing. It's pictures, but you can find bullying and racism and misogyny and all that kind of violent stuff, all gross stuff. So yeah, I think social media just needs more good. And we are a small cog in that machine. And I used to do timeline cleanses when things were feeling heavy on Twitter, especially, like something horrible happened with a shooting or something like that. Yeah, I don't want to bring everybody down, but you can get the idea. Like something heavy has happened. And I was like, why should I wait around for something heavy? It should be every day. So I have a scheduler program that helps me, plan Twitter. And I just loaded like 100 photos into it, and it just spits one out every single day. And I think it's good for everybody, like just to see you're scrolling and you're like, I'm so a dog,
nice. Something nice. Absolutely. Have you had some horrible things put on your Twitter feed?
Well, we're a science communication account, so you can probably guess the types of science that we maybe post about that gets a lot of negative comments, and that it gets very gross. And I was not prepared for it when I started. Now I have I have cast iron skin. I do not care. These people are not our fans. They cannot hurt us. They're not
No.
there for Bunsen and Beaker. So I do advise other people that lots, like when they're having a rough go with people bullying them, I'm like, they're not real people. Just say goodbye to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of them, they just wouldn't say those things face to face to anybody.
No, they're cowards. They're hiding behind a fake profile.
So that's one of the hard sides of social media. But yeah, you're doing all this wonderful stuff out there. So we're going to keep the mood happy. And you've had some really great guests on your podcast. And of course, including Dr. Debarati Das, who's the member of NASA's Mars Science Laboratory team. But can you tell me which scientific discussion subjects get you most excited?
Oh, that is okay. I saw that you sent me this question, and that is almost impossible to answer. I am blessed to be able to speak to scientists every week. Like every week, I'm usually talking to a scientist. And if I'm dumb, I schedule like 7 in 1 week. So some weeks, because I bank the interviews. And I love science so much that there's really no area of science that I am less excited about. My heart is with space. My heart of hearts is with the space scientists talking about space, because it's so big and so magical and so mind-boggling. But then I talked to a scientist that's working on something like the guest that's coming out today. She's working on multimodal imaging, which takes a cross-section of cells in your body and maps disease. And that is just so wild. Or I talked to a dinosaur scientist that they now know that dinosaurs had feathers because there's little nodules in their bones that the feathers attach to, just like birds. So every scientist I talk to blows my mind. And as they're talking, I make like a list of follow-up questions that are way beyond the scope of the time that we have. And I hope that comes across when I'm talking to the scientists, just how excited I am, because I'm that excited about science as a teacher when I'm teaching kids. And it's infectious.
Absolutely. And there's always something new to learn, isn't there?
Yeah. Science is never going to be satisfied. It will always ask questions. It's like a 3-year-old. Why? How come? Why? How come? And then it's like a 3-year-old telling you what they found out about. Like, I don't know if a 3-year-old has ever tried to explain something exciting to you. They are so excited and they're like stumbling over the language that they've just learned. But that's what science is. It's learning, communicating, and just being excited about the world that we live in.
Yeah, it's great. It's wonderful because, I think we said earlier, sometimes science is perceived as really, really difficult and intense and really hard to get your head around. But, it's wonderful. We need to know more about how we operate and how the universe operates. And it's amazing. It's amazing stuff.
From the big to the small, it's important to us all.
It is. So who would be your dream guest if you had to choose one? Somebody you haven't had already from the world science community.
Okay, so unfortunately, this person has passed away. But when I was growing up, the person that got me into science was a guy named Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan hosted a TV show called Cosmos, and he had this like voice and a calm way of speaking that was kind and just drew you in. And if I could speak to anyone, it would be the late Carl Sagan. And I think, I don't know what I would ask him, but I would probably just say thank you.
Yeah, for setting you off on that path. That's amazing. Wow. So you're such a busy person, Jason. So busy. What is next for you?
Well, it's the summer, so we usually I'm a teacher, so we get the summer holidays, right? The perk of being a teacher. And my wife and I worked really hard in July. we wrote the book Text from Bunsen 2. We are working on an activity book, which we're really excited about, which is like a Bunsen and Beaker activity book for kids where they can do mazes and word scrambles and coloring. So it's something that I've been trying to get our voice to as kids, because on Twitter it's not like some 8-year-old kid isn't tweeting, you know. But we want to get the science communication to kids, because right now our communication is to older teens and adults. And my wife and I are both teachers, and we know that kids are the most precious resource there is. And I really think we could do some good with our content with science education with kids. So
that's brilliant. Well, Jason, it's been absolutely wonderful talking to you. For our listeners, they can find you. I think if they just tap in Bunsen and Beaker, they will find you.
Yeah, you're either going to get the Muppets or you're going to get my dog.
So they will be able to find you. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I think I am inspired possibly to try and come face to face with a chunky murder weasel, but I may regret that.
I would take 20 chunky murder weasels over one cobra chicken any day.
I should remember that. Thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.